Welcome to Web3 and Social Media. I am your host, Jennifer Navarrete. I am a podcast producer, blockchain evangelist, virtual event producer, social media gal, coffee lover, and interested in all things new in tech, including AI, of course, right? If you're somebody who's an early adopter, you're looking at all the things. So the topic today is Web3 Summer. And you're thinking, Web3 Summer? What does that mean? How's that working? Well, summertime is usually, if you remember back in school, is when we're off, right? In school time, you take the summer off and it's like, woohoo, we're not in school anymore. But as an adult, guess what? The thing that we learn as adults is that learning never stops. So kind of combining the whole thought process of summer being a time of taking off and also summer being the fact that it doesn't really matter that it's summer, we're learning anyway. And also, I guess if I throw in maybe summer school, this is a great time to learn about Web3. Time's a little bit slower, right? There's a couple of times a year, 2 times a year, when work kind of slows down a little bit. It's not that the world stops turning, absolutely not. It continues turning. But in the winter holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah, all of the holidays, right? Kwanzaa, name your holiday at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of the calendar year, I should say. In November, December, typically work starts to slow down as we close out the year and begin a new year. And that's always a great time to kind of take stock of where you're at and where you want to go in the new year. It's also a great time to learn. It's a good time to just kind of really gather yourself together because we're always in the go, 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 do mode. And now is a good time to kind of pause, look around, reassess, make a plan, take action. I always think of summertime as kind of like the second version of that. Now, not as extreme, but still because the kids are out of school if you have kids. And if you travel and you don't have kids, you know that if you're traveling into work, summertime is like, oh, amazing, because their traffic is like half of what it normally is during the regular school year. Why? A lot of kids are not going to school. School buses aren't traveling. Parents aren't driving their kids. So rush hour is like this beautiful, easy thing. You can get to work in half the time and you're not dealing with a bunch of crazy traffic and it's glorious. Now, I haven't commuted in many a year, but I do remember truly appreciating summertime for the fact that I could get where I needed to go quicker, faster, and with less hassle. So keeping in mind that summertime is kind of like that second time to reassess, to pause, to learn is why this episode is titled Web3 Summer. And also, I'll tell you, also, I'm actually teaching a 5-part course right now on Web3 and AI to a group of entrepreneurs. And that whole model of learning and really taking time to pause a little bit to learn is really kind of at the top of mind for me. But you don't have to take the course and you don't have to be doing anything other than to consider this another opportunity to learn. Why learn about Web3? You're like, oh, Jennifer, I'm all about that AI now. Who has time for that? For Web3, that's last year's news or that's last week's news. And the reality is that Web3 isn't going away just because something new has replaced it in the hot, sexy title. In Threads is now, Twitter's gone. It's all about Threads. This thing happens all the time. The reality is Twitter is still around. The reality is Web 2 is still around. The reality is Web 3 is only going to grow in significance in our daily lives. It's been early adopter for a really long time. It's shifting. It's shifting into where it's becoming more known, and we're really starting to move towards mainstream adoption. If we think about Rogers bell curve, the fact is that for the 2.5 years that I've been talking about this, it's really been in early adopter mode. And it's still in early adopter mode, but you know how the Rogers bell curve works, right? It's kind of like a slow kind of crawl, and all of a sudden it just starts whoop, going up. So we're starting to shift towards that upwards momentum. And eventually, as it gets to the top of the curve, that's mainstream. And then, of course, it goes on to like late adopters and then laggards, right? But we're not there. We're still in these early days, but we are shifting towards mainstream. How do I know this? I'm super active in the space, and I'm also observing, read a lot, see a lot, know a lot of the people who are the movers and shakers in the space. And I'm starting to see more people who are not those early adopters really starting to kind of pay attention to this. And the acceptance and the conversation and the terminology is starting to become more accepted. And I think that to me is an early indicator of us moving upward. So, if you've been hearing me talk about Web3, if you've been hearing others talk about it, and I like to kind of think of it in my case because Web3 can be many things and is many things. Anyone who follows me knows that for me, Web3 is very, very narrow. It is about blockchain-based social media. If you like to post content on social media, you can do that on the blockchain / a blockchain, because there's a lot of blockchains out there. Find one that suits your fancy, where you like the community, you like the tribe, you like the way that blockchain operates. I have my favorites. And get ready to dive in, or at least dip your toe into the stream. It's time. Start learning. Start listening. Start subscribing to podcasts. Start listening to social audio rooms. Start watching videos. Start getting involved. Start learning more about it, because this is going to become more and more common. And if you are in your early learning stages now, you are going to be ahead of the curve for others who will be coming much later. The thing that I like to talk about when I teach my workshops and my courses and do some one-on-one coaching with folks is that I had a coach. I had a guide when I first got started. Well, no, let me pull back. I actually got started in August of 2017 without a guide, without anybody to kind of give me any guidance or understanding of what I was getting into. And I lasted all of, maybe a month. I didn't understand it. It was scary. I was alone. It was weird. And so I was like, I'm out of here. And then, so that was August of 2017. In March of 2021, I had a friend who said, hey, I've been doing this thing for a couple years. I think you should take a look at it. And I was like, okay. And as he was showing it to me, I was like, oh, this sounds so familiar. But even better, because what I had been doing in August of 2017 was kind of like rudimentary in compared to what was available in March of 2021. It was more broad, more feature rich, more opportunities, more options, more like regular social media. And I said, I'm going to go all in on this, but based on my previous experience, I'm not going to go all in on this alone. I'm going to ask my family to join me so that I have a built-in community and we can all learn together. And I said, I'll do this, but only if you are my guide. And he said, sure. And so Shane Mata became me and my family's guide in March of 2021 so that we could learn about blockchain-based social media, so that we could get an understanding of how Web3 could impact us. And I started a show with Shane in the summer of 2021 called the Crypto Content Creators, which is still out there. We did a few episodes. And then I started talking to others about it, started doing spaces, started hosting, challenges around it. And then the folks that were participating in the challenges were like, hey, do you have a course? Do you have a workshop? What do you do? And I said, sure. And I created a workshop in March of 2022. And ever since then, I've been educating others. And you see me talk about being a Web3 or blockchain evangelist. It's for that reason. You hear all this terminology, and if you don't have a guide to help you understand what it is and how it applies to you, it is a lonely slog. And because was the hot sexy in the last year or two, there's a lot of snake oil out there. So who do you trust? And if you're someone who followed snake oil and got burned, you probably hear me right now and you're like, it's a scam. It's not real. What has happened on Web3 is no different than what happened on Web2, Web1, back in the face-to-face days. I mean, there's been snake oil salespeople forever. Why? Because of human beings. Human beings can take their power for good, or they can use their power for not so good. And that doesn't change regardless of the tech or the tools or the age. Because you can go back and look at, biblical times and even before that. And human beings are human beings. That's all there is to it. So who do you trust? Who are the guides? Where is the information? How can you process it so it makes sense for you? That's what this is all about. Trying to find a way to share what it is that I am learning along the way, so that you can have an understanding of whether it makes sense for you, as well as have a sense of what it can do for you and what you can do for it, because it is very much a two-way street. Now, my goal is for you at some point to be someone else's guide in the same way that I and potentially your guide, in the same way that Shane Mata was me and my family's guide. It makes the biggest difference in the world, or at least in my own personal experience, it does. You can go it alone, but I can just tell you, I found it better to go with a community of other folks, so that I wasn't doing it by myself. So I was kind of like, ooh, what's this? Or somebody said, hey, I did this and this happened. I was like, really? That's cool. Just fast tracks your learning, and learning in a community space is always more fun, or at least that's the way I look at it. So Web3 Summer equals an opportunity to learn about how blockchain-based social media can work for you, with you, and how you can do the same. Because again, two-way. It's not a take, it's a give and a take. And it's this kind of beautiful infinity loop of that opportunity going on and on and on in a growing way. And if this makes no sense to you, understandable. New concepts, new ideas, yet in some ways very similar. So I invite you to take a look at what I have been doing. I've got Web3 101 spaces on Twitter that I've been doing for, over a year or so. I also have the cryptocontentcreators.com, socialmediaintheblockchain.com, podcastingintheblockchain.com. And typically, if you just want to reach out to me, DM me on Twitter, send me an inbox message on LinkedIn. I'm very, very easy to find. I am Jennifer Navarrete. I'm known as @ePodcaster, both on Web2 and Web3. And with that, I will close out. I wish you well. I hope that you embrace Web3 Summer, and that by the time summer is over, you're ready to take that full dive into what blockchain-based social media can do for you.